There have been so many musician biopics the past number of years, and the majority have fallen into the trap of using the same cliches and plot devices and make it seem like all these singers and songwriters have lived the same lives. Even ones that try to break the mold cannot help but stick with the formula. With Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, director-writer Scott Cooper mostly depicts Bruce Springsteen writing one of his albums. Normally, focusing on a singular period might allow a film to move away from the expected tropes. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of the cast, this retains several ingredients common in these biopics. The most recurring element in the movie is Springsteen seeing something and then having his light bulb switch on. Whether he's catching the Terrence Malick film Badlands on television or seeing a potential song title on a movie script, it's almost always followed by him scribbling lyrics, and then a few scenes later he's belting out the song. While those song inspirations are indeed true to reality, it becomes laughable how often we see this play out in the movie, and it's not as interesting as the film seems to think it is. There's also the record executive who doubts his newest album will succeed, and the flashbacks to his childhood. The film attempts to depict Springsteen's romance with a young woman, but there's a lack of chemistry there. He somehow has more chemistry with his manager and producer John Landau than he does with his girlfriend. The script also delves into his relationship with his abusive father, but the childhood flashbacks get in the way of the narrative, and the few scenes the older Springsteen shares with him don't leave the intended emotional impact. Jeremy Allen White does give a solid performance as Springsteen, not going for an imitation, but instead trying to dig into some of the emotions he's feeling. He opts for subtlety in his off-stage scenes, and then when he's performing for a crowd, White switches on the energy. You can sense how much Springsteen enjoys coming up with songs and singing for fans, and White also manages to portray some of his troubles. Although when the movie touches on his depressive state, it's brief and not given as much time as expected. The overall pacing of the film is quite languid, as many of the scenes are not that interesting. Deliver Me From Nowhere only really picks up for the concert scenes, which are not that many. The movie just cannot quite escape the annoyingly rigid conventions of the musician biopic try as it might, and most bothersome of all is how dull it is as it meanders from scene to scene of Springsteen in rooms writing in his notebook or having uninteresting conversations with his girlfriend. Jeremy Allen White tries his best to carry the movie, and it's performance that does the job. He's just let down by the script, which gives him little to work with. Bruce Springsteen would obviously become a much celebrated musician, but there's no sense of why outside of the multiple scenes of people praising Born in the U.S.A.